The wine glass was halfway to my lips when Dad clicked on the television, and my entire world shattered into a million pieces. I'm Cora Adkins, 32 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew everything about my family. We were gathered for our monthly Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Connecticut, the same tradition we'd kept alive since I was 12. My sister Beth sat across from me, twirling her pasta and laughing at something Mom had said about the neighbors. Everything felt normal. Comfortable even, until Dad's face turned to stone. He had been quiet all through dinner, which wasn't unusual for him. He was always the thoughtful type, measuring his words carefully. But when he stood up and walked to the television without saying anything, Mom and Beth exchanged confused glances. I set down my wine glass, watching him insert a USB drive into the TV with deliberate, almost ceremonial movements. "I need everyone to watch something," he said, his voice carrying a weight I'd never heard before. The screen flickered to life, showing the familiar interior of First National Bank on Madison Street. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago Tuesday, 2:47 p.m. "Dad, what is this?" Beth asked, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. But Dad just raised his hand for silence. The security footage was crystal clear, showing someone at the teller window. The figure wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, but something about the way they moved, the tilt of their head, the gesture of tucking hair behind their ear, made my stomach drop. The teller counted out stack after stack of $100 bills. "That's our family emergency fund," Dad said quietly. $200,000, built up over 30 years. Your grandmother's life insurance, my bonuses, everything we saved for real catastrophe. He turned to look directly at me. "The account only you were supposed to have access to, Cora. The one you promised to protect." The person on screen turned slightly, adjusting their sunglasses, and in that moment, I saw it clearly. The birthmark on the neck, the way they favored their left hand, the nervous habit of touching their earlobe. My eyes shot to Beth, who had gone completely white, her wine glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the hardwood floor. I started to say, but the words died in my throat, because the person on that screen looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, even wearing the jacket Beth had borrowed from my closet last month. But I knew with absolute certainty that I had never been to that bank, never touched that money. Mom stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. "Robert, what are you saying? What is this?" Dad's eyes never left mine. "I'm saying someone stole our entire emergency fund. Someone who knew about it, knew the account details, knew Cora's information." He paused, and in that pause, I heard it. Sirens getting closer. "I'm saying we've been betrayed by family." Beth's hands were shaking as she bent to pick up the glass shards. "Dad, there has to be an explanation. Maybe it's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," he said, pulling out his phone to show bank statements. 23 withdrawals over 3 weeks. Different branches, different times, but always just under the reporting limit. Professional, calculated. The doorbell rang, followed immediately by firm knocking. "Police, we need to speak with Cora Adkins." My legs felt like water. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust, about family, about everything I thought I knew crumbling around me. As I walked to the door, I caught Beth's reflection in the hallway mirror. The look on her face wasn't shock or confusion. It was guilt, pure and undeniable. "Beth," I whispered, turning back to her. "What did you do?" 3 weeks before that horrible Sunday dinner, life had seemed perfect. I'd just gotten promoted to senior accountant at Morrison & Associates. Mom had recovered fully from her hip surgery, and Beth had announced she was finally going back to school to finish her nursing degree. We were the Adkins family, stable, successful, supportive of each other no matter what. The emergency fund had been Dad's idea after Grandma Rose passed away 5 years ago. She'd left a substantial life insurance policy, and Dad, ever the pragmatist, insisted we keep it as a family safety net. "You never know when disaster might strike," he'd said, entrusting me with the account access because of my financial background. It was supposed to be our shield against catastrophe, medical emergencies, house fires, the kind of life-altering events you pray never happen. I should have noticed the signs earlier. Beth had been acting strange for about 2 months, but I'd attributed it to stress about going back to school. She'd started working extra shifts at the restaurant, claiming she needed money for textbooks, When she showed up with a new designer handbag, she said it was a gift from her boyfriend Marcus. When her car suddenly had expensive new rims, she laughed it off as Marcus spoiling her again. Marcus. Even thinking his name now makes my skin crawl. He'd appeared in Beth's life 6 months ago like some kind of romantic movie hero. Charming, successful, always picking up the check, always having the right words. He claimed to be in real estate development, drove a black Mercedes, wore expensive watches. Mom loved him. Dad was skeptical, but polite. I was somewhere in between, wanting to be happy for Beth, but feeling something was off. The first real red flag came when Beth asked me about the emergency fund over coffee one morning. Just curious, she'd said, stirring sugar into her latte. How does Dad access that account? Like, what if something happened to you? I'd explained that I was the only authorized user, that it required my ID, my signature, my presence. She'd nodded thoughtfully, then changed the subject to Marcus's upcoming business trip to Miami. Looking back, I realized she was gathering information piece by piece. Then came the day she borrowed my jacket. It was raining, she was running late for work, and her coat was at Marcus's apartment. Such a small thing, letting your sister borrow clothes. She returned it the next day, apologizing profusely for getting it wet. I hadn't thought twice about it until I saw that security footage. What I didn't know then was that Dad had already started his investigation. Being a retired bank manager has its advantages. He still had friends in the system, people who'd alert him to unusual activity. When the first large withdrawal hit, a former colleague called him immediately. Dad didn't want to believe it at first. Couldn't imagine either of his daughters would betray the family like that. So he'd started watching, gathering evidence, pulling security footage through his connections. He'd tracked every withdrawal, mapped out the pattern, noticed how the person always chose branches where the staff didn't know our family. He'd watched his own daughter, though he didn't know which one, systematically drain our safety net. The sophistication of it should have been my clue. Beth was smart, but she wasn't financially savvy. She could barely balance her own checkbook, always asking me for help with her taxes. This plan, with its carefully structured withdrawals just under federal reporting limits, its use of multiple branches, its timing to avoid pattern detection, this was someone else's design. Dad later told me he'd spent those 3 weeks in agony, trying to figure out which daughter had betrayed him. He'd tested us both in subtle ways. When he mentioned considering moving the fund to a different bank, I'd agreed it might be wise to diversify. Beth had gone pale and quickly changed the subject. When he'd casually mentioned that banks were upgrading their security systems to use biometric scanning, I'd been interested in the technology. Beth had excused herself to the bathroom and stayed there for 15 minutes. The police officers stood in our doorway like harbingers of doom, their expressions professionally neutral, but their eyes alert, taking in every detail of our family drama. Officer Patricia Brennan, a woman about Mom's age with kind eyes that missed nothing, asked if they could come in. Behind her, a younger officer held a tablet and a folder thick with documents. "Miss Adkins," Officer Brennan addressed me directly, "we need to ask you about some unusual activity on a bank account registered under your name." Dad stepped forward. "I'm the one who called you, Robert Adkins. The account in question is our family emergency fund, and I have evidence of theft." The officers exchanged glances. This wasn't what they'd expected. Usually, the account holder was the victim, not a suspect. Officer Brennan asked us all to sit down, and what followed was the most excruciating hour of my life. They laid out the evidence methodically, 23 withdrawals totaling $200,000. Each withdrawal was captured on security cameras, the person always wearing my clothes or similar outfits, always careful to keep their face partially obscured, but not enough to avoid identification. They had copies of the withdrawal slips, each bearing what looked like my signature. "I've never seen these before," I said, my voice shaking as I examined the signatures. They were close to mine, very close, but something was off. The way the C in Cora curved, the pressure on the downstroke of the A. Someone had practiced my signature but hadn't quite perfected it. Beth hadn't said a word since the officers arrived. She sat curled into the corner of the couch, arms wrapped around her knees, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. When Officer Brennan asked her if she knew anything about the withdrawals, she just shook her head, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The thing is, Officer Brennan continued, the banks have been upgrading their systems. The newer branches have better cameras, different angles. She pulled out her tablet, swiped to a new video. This footage is from First National's downtown branch, recorded last Monday. The video was HD quality, showing the person at the teller from a side angle the customer couldn't see. As they handed over the withdrawal slip, their sleeve rode up, revealing a tattoo on the inner wrist. A small butterfly with the initials BMA worked into the wing pattern, Beth Marie Adkins. If you're still listening, I need you to know that family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound. Maybe you've experienced it too. That moment when someone you trust with your life breaks that sacred bond. If my story is helping you process your own pain, please consider subscribing to hear more. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles makes all the difference. Your comments and support help me keep sharing these difficult truths. The room erupted. Mom started crying, deep, body-shaking sobs. Dad stood up and walked to the window, his back to all of us, shoulders rigid with controlled fury. And Beth finally broke. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she cried out, the words tumbling over each other. "It was supposed to be just a loan, just temporary. Marcus said he had this investment opportunity, that we'd triple the money in a month and I could put it all back before anyone noticed." "Marcus," Dad said, his voice deadly quiet. "Of course." Beth was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks. "He said his business partners were threatening him, that they'd hurt him if he didn't come up with the money. He showed me texts, photos of what they'd done to other people who didn't pay. I was terrified." Officer Brennan leaned forward. "Miss Adkins, Beth, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. You've admitted to withdrawing money from an account that wasn't yours, using fraudulent identification. That's identity theft, fraud, and grand larceny. We're talking about potential federal charges." The younger officer added, "We've been investigating Marcus Winters for 6 months. This matches his pattern. Finding vulnerable women with access to family money, manufacturing crisis situations, emotional manipulation. You're not his first victim, but you are the first to get caught." Beth looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time since this started. "Cora, I'm so sorry. I thought I could fix it. I thought I was protecting him, protecting us. He said he loved me, said we'd have this perfect future once this was over." "Where's the money now?" Officer Brennan asked. "I gave it all to Marcus, every penny. He said he was investing it, but..." Beth's voice broke. "I haven't heard from him in 4 days. His phone's disconnected. His apartment's empty. I went by yesterday and the landlord said he'd moved out in the middle of the night." The investigation that followed revealed a web of deception that went far deeper than any of us imagined. Officer Brennan, it turned out, had been building a case against Marcus Winters, whose real name was Mitchell Wierenski, for over a year. Beth wasn't his first victim, not even his third. She was number 7 in a string of what the FBI called romance fraud schemes that had netted him over $2 million across 5 states. As we sat in the police station the next morning, Officer Brennan laid out the full scope of Marcus's operation. He had a team, a woman who helped him scout victims through social media, a tech guy who created fake investment portfolios and business credentials, even a makeup artist who'd helped Beth disguise herself as me for the bank cameras. "The birthmark," I said suddenly, remembering the security footage. "I have a birthmark on my neck. How did they..." Beth's face crumbled. "Marcus had his friend do it. Said it was for a costume party that he wanted to surprise you with how much I could look like you. I was so stupid." The technical sophistication was staggering. They'd gathered information about me for months, my schedule, my habits, even my banking passwords through a keylogger Marcus had installed on Beth's laptop when she'd borrowed mine for homework. They knew I worked late on Tuesdays and Thursdays, that I never checked my bank statements mid-month, that I had a standing lunch date with Mom on Wednesdays that would keep me away from downtown during peak banking hours. But the most chilling revelation came when Officer Brennan showed us messages from Marcus's phone, which they'd recovered from a burner found in his abandoned apartment. The texts showed he'd been planning this from the moment he'd met Beth at that charity fundraiser 6 months ago. He'd known about our family's money before their first date. He'd researched us, found out about Grandma Rose's insurance policy through public probate records, identified Beth as the weak link through her social media posts about feeling inadequate next to her successful older sister. "I need to show you something," Beth said quietly, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. "I recorded some of our conversations. At first, it was because I wanted to replay them, to hear him say he loved me. But later I started feeling like something was wrong." She played a voice recording from 3 weeks ago. Marcus's smooth voice filled the room. "Baby, your sister won't even notice. She's got her big promotion, her perfect life. This is our chance to level the playing field. Don't you deserve to be happy too? Don't you deserve what she has?" Another recording from 2 weeks ago. "If you don't do this, they'll kill me, Beth. Is that what you want? You want to explain to your family how you let me die because you wouldn't help? Because you cared more about their money than my life?" And the last one, recorded just 5 days ago. "Stop calling me. It's done. You did great, baby. Give me a few more days to flip the investment and we'll be set. Trust me. Have I ever lied to you?" Dad's knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of the table. He studied us. He found our weakness and exploited it. Officer Brennan nodded. "That's his pattern. He finds families with money, identifies the most emotionally vulnerable member, usually someone who feels overshadowed or underappreciated, and builds an elaborate fantasy around them. The crisis is always manufactured, the threat's always fake, but by the time victims realize it, the money's gone. But we can get it back, right?" Mom asked desperately. "If you catch him." The silence that followed told us everything. Marcus, Mitchell, was probably already in another state, another identity, stalking another family. The money had likely been converted to cryptocurrency and scattered across dozens of untraceable accounts within hours of Beth handing it over. "There's something else," Officer Brennan said, her voice gentler now. "We found evidence on his computer of surveillance on your family. Photos, schedules, recordings. Beth, he had you wear a wire sometimes, didn't he? Said it was to protect you both?" Beth nodded miserably. "He said if anything went wrong, we'd need evidence that I was coerced. He was building a case to frame you entirely if he got caught, make you the mastermind, him the unwitting accomplice. We found draft emails from your account that he wrote but never sent, discussing the plan as if it was your idea." The full weight of the betrayal hit Beth then. She'd lost more than money. She'd lost her identity, her family's trust, her sense of self, and somewhere out there, Marcus was probably already charming his next victim, spinning the same lies, creating the same manufactured crisis. But then Officer Brennan said something that changed everything. However, there might be a way to catch him. He's gotten comfortable, sloppy. He's used the same MO too many times. And Beth, you have something none of his other victims had. "What's that?" Beth asked. "A recording of him admitting to the crime, and a family willing to fight back." The next 48 hours changed everything. Officer Brennan had connected us with FBI Special Agent David Chen, who specialized in interstate fraud cases. He sat in our living room, looking more like a tech startup CEO than a federal agent, laying out options with a directness that was both terrifying and oddly comforting. "Beth faces serious charges," he said plainly. "Identity theft, fraud, grand larceny. We're talking 5 to 10 years federal prison time," Mom gasped, reaching for Dad's hand. "However," Agent Chen continued, "if she cooperates fully, helps us catch Mitchell Wierenski, and testifies against him, we might be able to work out a deal. Probation, community service, restitution payments." The decision tore our family apart and put it back together in the span of a single evening. Dad wanted Beth to face the full consequences. Tough love, he called it. Mom couldn't bear the thought of her daughter in prison. And me? I was angry, furious even. But looking at Beth's hollow eyes, seeing how completely she'd been destroyed by this man's manipulation, I knew what we had to do. "We help catch him," I said firmly. "We're family. We fix this together." That's when Agent Chen revealed something that made my blood run cold. They'd been monitoring Marcus's patterns, and he was already working a new target. A widow in Philadelphia named Sandra Morrison, whose husband had left her a $3 million life insurance policy. He'd met her at a grief support group just 2 weeks ago, already playing the role of a caring, wounded soul who understood her pain. "We can't let him do this to someone else," Beth said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. "I'll do whatever it takes." The plan was ambitious. Marcus had made one crucial mistake. He'd given Beth an emergency contact number, a phone he claimed was for absolute emergencies only. The FBI traced it to a burner phone that was still active, though he rarely turned it on. But when he did, usually once every 3 days for about 10 minutes, he checked messages. Beth would send him a message that would make him come back, not asking him to return, which would raise suspicions, but warning him that she was about to be arrested and might have to tell the police everything. She'd say she'd hidden some of the money, keeping it as insurance, and she needed to give it to him before the cops found it. "He'll know it's a trap," Beth worried. "No," Agent Chen said. "He'll think you're panicking, making stupid decisions. That's what he expects from you. To be weak, frightened, dependent on him. We're going to use his arrogance against him." I spent hours coaching Beth on what to say, how to sound desperate but not suspicious. We practiced until her voice carried just the right amount of fear and devotion. Meanwhile, the FBI was setting up surveillance at 3 possible meeting spots, places Marcus had taken Beth before, locations he'd feel safe. The message Beth finally sent was perfect in its simplicity. "They know about the money. Dad hired investigators, found a bank I didn't tell you about, put $50K there just in case. Can't let them find it. Please, one last time. Garden Street Parking Garage, Level 3, tomorrow 8 p.m. If you ever love me, please. After this, I'll never contact you again. They're arresting me Thursday." We waited. 1 hour, 2, 6. Then, at hour 7, 3 dots appeared on Beth's phone. He was typing. The message came through, "You stupid girl, 8 p.m. That night, none of us slept. Beth sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone, while Mom made cup after cup of tea that no one drank. Dad cleaned his already spotless garage, needing something to do with his hands. And I found myself in Beth's room, looking at photos of us as kids, remembering when we were just sisters who fought over toys and shared secrets, before money and men complicated everything. The next evening came too fast and not fast enough. Beth wore a wire, hidden in a necklace that looked like the one Marcus had given her for their 3-month anniversary. Agent Chen's team was positioned throughout the garage. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I couldn't stay away. I sat in an FBI surveillance van 2 blocks away, watching everything unfold on monitors. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, driving a different car, a rental with Arizona plates. He'd changed his appearance too. Blonde hair, now dark, clean-shaven face, now sporting a goatee. But his walk was the same, that confident swagger that had once charmed my sister. "You look terrible," were his first words to Beth. Even through the grainy surveillance footage, I could see him scanning the garage, looking for threats. "I haven't slept since you left," Beth replied, her voice perfectly calibrated between desperate and exhausted. "Where have you been? Taking care of our future, baby. Where's the money?" Beth held up a car key. "Locker 237, 2 levels down." But Mitchell, she used his real name deliberately, watched him flinch. "I know about Philadelphia, about Sandra Morrison." His face changed then, the mask slipping. "You don't know anything. I know everything. The FBI came to me, showed me files on 6 other women, but I didn't tell them anything. I protected you, just like always." He stepped closer, and for a moment I thought he might hurt her. Agent Chen's team tensed, ready to move. But then Marcus did something unexpected. He laughed. "You really are pathetic, aren't you? You think this is love? This was business, Beth. You were a mark, a easy score with daddy issues and an inferiority complex I could exploit." "I know," Beth said quietly. "I've known for a while, but I loved you anyway. That's why I'm giving you this chance to run. Take the money and go. Don't come back." He grabbed the key from her hand. "Finally, something smart from you." As he turned to leave, Beth said the code phrase that would signal the FBI to move. "I hope you find peace." The arrest was swift and decisive. Marcus tried to run but found every exit blocked. He dropped to his knees in the middle of the garage, and in that moment all his confidence evaporated. He looked like what he was, a small, desperate con man who'd finally run out of cons. The full scope of Marcus's operation unraveled over the following weeks like a cheap sweater. With his laptop seized and his network exposed, the FBI uncovered a massive fraud ring spanning 7 states. But the real shock came when they found his trophy files, detailed records of every con, every victim, every dollar stolen, like a serial killer, keeping souvenirs. Beth's case was file number 43. Agent Chen let us review parts of Marcus's notes about our family, though Mom couldn't bear to look. His initial assessment of Beth was clinical, cruel. Subject is 29, underemployed, living in sister's shadow. Parents clearly favor older daughter. Strong candidate for emotional manipulation. Estimated take 150, 300 KI based on probate records. But as the weeks had progressed, his notes changed. Beth had been more resistant than expected, asking questions, wanting to meet his business partners, suggesting alternatives to taking the family money. He'd had to escalate his tactics, introduce the threat narrative earlier than planned, even involve his team to make the threats seem real. "You fought him more than you realized," Agent Chen told Beth. "Most victims gave in within 6 weeks. You held out for 3 months. He had to work for this one." The FBI had set up a brilliant sting operation. The locker Beth had mentioned contained marked bills and a tracking device. More importantly, they'd found Marcus's real identity through an old arrest record from Nevada. Mitchell Warensky was actually Michael Warren Kowalski, a former insurance adjuster who'd learned exactly how much money grieving families received and decided he wanted his share. Sandra Morrison, the widow in Philadelphia, agreed to help after learning she was being targeted. She wore a wire to their next date, where Marcus was already laying groundwork about his sick mother needing experimental treatment. The recording of him using the exact same phrases he'd used on Beth, "You're different from other women. I've never felt this connection before. My mother would have loved you," was painful to hear. During the trial preparation, more victims came forward. Jennifer from Austin, who'd lost her divorce settlement. Maria from Chicago, whose father's inheritance disappeared. Ashley from Seattle, who'd emptied her children's college funds. Each woman told the same story. A charming man who understood their pain, a crisis that needed immediate action, money that vanished along with him. But the most dramatic moment came when Marcus's partner, the woman who'd helped scout victims, flipped on him for immunity. Diane Frost was a former actress who'd met Marcus when he'd conned her dying grandmother. Instead of turning him in, she joined him, becoming his scout and sometime accomplice. She provided receipts, recordings, even videos of Marcus laughing about his stupid marks and planning his next score. He called it therapeutic theft. Diane testified, said these women needed to learn they couldn't trust everyone, that he was doing them a favor by teaching them a lesson. He'd actually get angry if anyone suggested the victims were truly hurt, insisted they were all rich anyway, that they'd be fine. Our family attended every day of the trial. Beth testified for 3 hours, detailing the manipulation, the lies, the gradual erosion of her self-worth, until giving him the money seemed like the only way to save everyone. When the prosecutor asked why she'd stolen from her own family, she broke down. "Because he made me believe they didn't really love me anyway, that I was the disappointment, the failure. He said taking the money was just making official what everyone already knew, that I didn't deserve to be part of a successful family. And after years of feeling like I wasn't good enough, part of me believed him." That testimony led to something unexpected. 3 jurors approached the prosecutor during a break, sharing their own stories of family members who'd been conned by romance scammers. The prosecutor later told us it was the first time she'd seen jurors cry during a fraud case. Marcus was convicted on all counts: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, money laundering. The judge, a stern woman who'd seen every type of criminal in her 30-year career, had harsh words during sentencing. "Mr. Kowalski, you didn't just steal money. You stole trust, love, hope. You identified vulnerable people and exploited their deepest insecurities. You turned family members against each other. This court sentences you to 25 years federal prison, with no possibility of early release." As they led him away, Marcus turned to look at Beth one last time. I expected to see hatred or anger in his eyes. Instead, there was nothing, just the empty stare of a man who'd never felt a genuine emotion in his life. The months following Marcus's conviction were harder than the trial itself. The adrenaline of catching him had worn off, leaving us to face the wreckage he'd left behind. $200,000 doesn't just disappear without consequences. Dad had to come out of retirement, taking a consulting position at his old bank. At 65, he was working 50-hour weeks again, his dreams of traveling with Mom indefinitely postponed. Mom sold her beloved grandmother's jewelry collection, pieces she'd planned to pass down to Beth and me. The house needed a new roof that year. That fund was gone. Mom's planned knee surgery, postponed indefinitely. Beth's legal troubles were far from over. Though the federal prosecutor had recommended leniency, the state had its own charges. She pled guilty to identity theft and fraud, receiving 5 years probation, 2,000 hours of community service, and was ordered to pay restitution, $50,000 over 10 years. Even though she'd never seen a penny of the stolen money herself, she moved back home, unable to afford her apartment. The nursing program rejected her application once her criminal record appeared on the background check. The restaurant where she'd worked fired her the day the story hit the local news. For 3 months, she couldn't find work anywhere. Who wants to hire someone convicted of stealing from their own family? The worst part was watching her disappear into herself. The confident, laughing sister I'd known was gone, replaced by someone who flinched at sudden noises and couldn't make eye contact. She started therapy, but healing from that level of manipulation takes time. Time we couldn't get back, trust that couldn't be instantly restored. Our extended family chose sides. Dad's brother called Beth a disgrace, said she should have gotten jail time. Mom's sister accused us of being too harsh, claimed we'd driven Beth into Marcus's arms by making her feel inadequate. Thanksgiving that year was just the 4 of us, eating Chinese takeout because nobody had the energy to pretend everything was normal. I struggled with my own anger. Some days I'd see Beth helping Mom with dishes, looking so broken, and my heart would ache for her. Other days, I'd remember standing in that police station being accused of theft, watching Dad's retirement disappear, and the rage would burn so hot I couldn't be in the same room as her. The turning point came in February, 5 months after the trial. I came home from work to find Beth in the garage, going through old boxes. She was holding a photo album from our childhood, birthday parties, family vacations, Christmas mornings, when the biggest worry was whether Santa would bring the right toys. "Remember this?" she asked, pointing to a picture of us at ages 8 and 11, dressed as matching witches for Halloween. "You made me be the good witch because you wanted to be the scary one. You cried because you wanted the black hat," I remembered. "And you gave it to me anyway." She traced the photo with her finger. "You always gave me what I wanted, even when it meant you went without. Maybe that's why Marcus chose me. He could see I was used to taking from you." "That's not true, Beth, isn't it? How many times did you cover my rent when I was between jobs? How many family dinners did you pay for because I forgot my wallet? I was taking from you long before Marcus showed up. He just made it official." We talked until 3 in the morning. Really talked for the first time since everything happened, about the pressure of being the responsible older sister, about the burden of being the family disappointment, about how Marcus had weaponized our insecurities against us, turning love into leverage. "I don't know how to fix this," Beth admitted. "I can't give back what I took. Not just the money, the trust, the security, Dad's retirement, your peace of mind. How do I make restitution for that?" I didn't have an answer then, but over the following weeks, Beth found her own way. She took a job at a crisis hotline, specifically working with fraud victims. She couldn't use her real name, of course, but under the alias Sarah, she spent nights talking to people who'd lost everything to scammers, using her experience to help them understand they weren't stupid or weak, just human. She started attending fraud victim support groups, first as a participant, then as a speaker. Her story, our story, became a cautionary tale that saved others. 3 women came forward saying Beth's testimony had given them the courage to report their own romance scammers. An elderly man said her speech helped him recognize the warning signs when a grandson called needing emergency money. One evening, I found her writing letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Marcus's other victims. "They deserve to know someone understands," she explained, "that someone else fell for the same lies, believed the same promises. They need to know it wasn't their fault." Some victims wrote back, Jennifer from Austin said Beth's letter was the first time she'd felt understood since losing her money. Maria from Chicago shared that she'd attempted suicide after Marcus disappeared, but Beth's words reminded her that surviving was its own form of victory. It's been 18 months now since Dad turned on that television and our world imploded. 18 months of therapy, family counseling, legal battles, and slow, painful healing. We're not the same family we were before. We never will be. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. The financial recovery has been gradual. The FBI recovered exactly $0 of our stolen money, but the Victims' Compensation Fund eventually paid out $30,000. Dad's consulting work has been extended for another 2 years, and he's discovered he actually enjoys mentoring young bankers. Mom started selling her quilts online, turning a hobby into a small but steady income stream. Every dollar helps. Beth lives in a small studio apartment now, 5 blocks from our parents' house. She works full-time at a nonprofit that helps fraud victims navigate the legal system, making barely above minimum wage, but finding purpose in the work. In the evenings, she studies for her paralegal certification online, determined to understand the law that both prosecuted and protected her. She's paid back $12,000 so far, every payment accompanied by a handwritten note to Dad, detailing how many hours she worked for that money. Dad saves every note in a folder marked Redemption, though he thinks we don't know about it. Our relationship is complicated but real. We have coffee every Saturday morning, a new tradition that started as court-ordered family therapy homework and evolved into something we both need. Some Saturdays, we laugh about old memories. Others, we sit in silence, the weight of everything between us. But we show up. That's what matters. The surprise revelation came 6 months ago when Dad finally admitted he'd known more than he'd let on. He'd actually discovered the theft 2 weeks before that Sunday dinner, but had spent that time investigating, making sure he had the complete picture before confronting us. "I needed to know if you were in on it together," he admitted to me one evening. "If both my daughters had conspired against me, those were the worst 2 weeks of my life, suspecting you both, trusting neither. Why didn't you just ask me? Because if you were involved, you'd lie. And if you weren't, you'd try to protect Beth. I needed the truth more than I needed comfort." He'd also done something else during those 2 weeks, hidden away $50,000 from another account, moving it somewhere even I didn't have access to. Insurance, he called it. I learned my lesson about keeping all our eggs in one basket. That hidden money became the down payment on keeping our family home when Mom's medical bills started piling up. Dad's foresight, born from paranoia and pain, ended up saving us from complete financial ruin. The most unexpected development came last month. Sandra Morrison, the widow Marcus had been targeting when we caught him, reached out to our family. She'd followed the trial, watched Beth testify, and been moved by our story. As a therapist specializing in trauma recovery, she offered to counsel Beth pro bono. "Survivors helping survivors," she called it. "Your daughter's bravery saved me from losing everything. This is how I pay it forward." Their sessions have transformed Beth in ways our family therapy never could. There's something about talking to someone who was almost in your shoes, who Marcus had marked as his next victim, that creates a unique understanding. Sandra doesn't minimize what Beth did, but she also doesn't let her drown in shame. "Shame keeps you stuck," I overheard Sandra telling Beth once. "Guilt can motivate change, but shame just paralyzes. You're not a bad person who did a bad thing. You're a person who made terrible choices under extraordinary manipulation. Now you get to choose who you become next." Last week, something remarkable happened. A young woman called the Fraud Victim Hotline, where Beth volunteers, crying about a boyfriend who needed money for his mother's cancer treatment. Beth recognized the pattern immediately. The urgency, the emotional manipulation, the isolation from family who wouldn't understand. Beth spent 3 hours on the phone with her, gently walking her through the red flags, sharing her own story, helping her see the truth. The next day, the woman called back. She'd confronted the boyfriend, who'd immediately disappeared. Her family's savings, $40,000, were safe. "You saved them," Beth's supervisor told her. "Your story, your pain, saved an entire family from going through what yours did." Beth called me crying after that shift. the first happy tears I'd seen from her in 2 years. "Maybe this is why it happened to me," she said, "so I could stop it from happening to others. I don't believe everything happens for a reason. That's too neat, too clean for the mess Marcus left behind. But I do believe we can create meaning from our pain, purpose from our mistakes." Beth made a terrible decision that cost our family everything, but she's spending every day trying to balance that ledger, one saved family at a time. The money's gone. We've accepted that. Dad will work until he's 70. Mom's traveling dreams are reduced to day trips. My own savings were depleted covering family expenses during the worst months. But we're still here, still a family, still showing up for each other even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Marcus is serving his 25 years in federal prison. He's tried to appeal twice, both times denied. Diane Frost, his accomplice, served 6 months and now works with the FBI to identify romance scammers. She sent Beth a letter once, apologizing for her role, explaining how Marcus had destroyed her life too before recruiting her. Beth never responded, but she kept the letter. "Evidence that monsters can reform," she called it. The truth about trust is that once broken, it's never quite the same when repaired. It's like a vase that's been shattered and glued back together, functional, possibly even beautiful, but you can always see the cracks if you look closely enough. Our family is that vase now, held together by forgiveness and determination rather than naive faith. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes the repaired version is stronger than the original. We don't trust blindly anymore. We ask questions, verify stories, protect ourselves while still choosing to love. Beth says she'll never trust another romantic partner the way she trusted Marcus. And maybe that's not a bad thing. That kind of blind trust is dangerous. The trust she's building now, with us, with herself, is earned through actions, not words. Every family has that story, that defining moment when everything changed. Ours involved $200,000, a con man, and a sister who lost herself so completely she betrayed everyone who loved her. But it's also a story of redemption, of choosing family even when they've given you every reason not to, of finding strength in the broken places. If you've made it this far in our story, you understand that family isn't just about blood or happy memories. It's about showing up when showing up is the hardest thing in the world. It's about forgiveness that doesn't erase the past, but makes room for a future. It's about learning that love and trust aren't the same thing, and you can have one while rebuilding the other. The emergency fund is gone, spent on a lesson we never wanted to learn. But we're still here, still fighting, still choosing each other every day. And maybe, in the end, that's worth more than any amount of money. Beth volunteers 4 nights a week now, has saved 7 families from scammers and counting. She'll never replace the $200,000, but she's protecting millions in other people's money. She calls it her penance. I call it her purpose. Last Sunday, we had our monthly family dinner again. Beth made her famous lasagna, Dad opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving, and Mom told embarrassing stories from our childhood. For a few hours, we were just a normal family, one that happened to have an extraordinary story of loss and redemption. As Beth was leaving, she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I hugged her back, tighter than I had in years. That's what family does, and that's the truth. Not the Facebook perfect version of family, but the real, messy, complicated truth. We show up, we forgive, we rebuild, and we never, ever let each other fall alone again. The Adkins Family Emergency Fund is being rebuilt now. $10 here, $20 there. It'll take years to get back to where we were. But this time, it's in 3 different banks with 2 signatures required and regular audits. We learned our lesson the hardest way possible. Trust, but verify. Love, but protect yourself. And when family fails you, when they break your heart and empty your accounts and shatter your faith in humanity, you have a choice. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it transform you. We chose transformation. Every single day, we choose it again.